I'll continue to push a 12-week target book on you because I know it works. I know that if you're able to track your actions, your results will follow suit. Welcome, and to another episode of Mindset Mastery. I'm your host. Go ahead and check in as you're coming on board. And we have a very interesting topic. I think it's a topic we have to revisit often because we are in a place, in a business that, oftentimes we do have to compare, right? We have to compare our results. We have to compare ourselves. We have to compare our systems and our processes to hopefully get better. But I think it becomes a detriment to many businesses. It becomes almost like an anchor to many of us that can't move forward powerfully after doing such comparisons. And one of the things that I want to remind you is that, comparison really discredits your own journey. And, this week or last week, we had our mid-year review. And we celebrated the accomplishments of many of our agents here at A's and Associates. And we all witnessed this. We saw some big numbers, the biggest we've ever had in the history of A's and Associates. And, as we start seeing the results, all the way down to, top 20 is what we recognize. We had everyone over $2 million in sales. And there was a time in our own history where, having agents hit $2 million in sales for one quarter wasn't as common as it is today. In fact, I think it was reserved for maybe the top 3 or 4. But as we've honed in on our skill sets, as we've mastered our mindset, right? As we've improved ourselves, these things are becoming more and more common. And, just to see the sheer amount of people that are hitting these numbers, it brings me a lot of joy and satisfaction because I understand what it does for you as the agent, right? That are getting the best numbers ever, that are hitting, financial situations that they never thought they would be in, where they're not stressed out about money, where you're feeling good, right? Things are progressing. But I did notice a couple things. And some of you even reached out. You had great months. You had a phenomenal second quarter. You had a phenomenal first half of the year. And as I started, recognizing these different agents, some of you got a little almost down on yourself. Because although it was your best quarter or best 6 months ever, or even best month for some of you, there was still a part of you that said, well, this other person did better than me. Like, yes, I was elated until I saw this list. And I get how that feels sometimes, right? Where we do want to run with the best. We do want to be on top of the list. We do want to be the best. But when we immediately bring ourselves down from those feelings, right? When we're feeling good about ourselves because we saw somebody doing it better, I think it just discredits everything that maybe you've done. It really discredits how good you're feeling. And, I think there's good comparison and there's sometimes, bad comparison is when we get jealous of others, performance or others' lives. And with today's day and age, social media it's a real easy thing to do. It's a real easy thing to compare how dysfunctional our life is compared to this other person, how happy their marriage is compared to the marriage I'm in. Look how fit they are. Look at those abs, the abs that they have. And I'm nowhere near that. I mean, there's just, as soon as we enter these mediums, there's an immediate sense, consciously or subconsciously, that, you're either better or worse than a particular person. And, for some odd reason, I think we compare to estimate or measure our own self-worth. I think that's the main reason, right? As opposed to just feeling good about where what we've done to accomplish where we're at. I think we compare ourselves oftentimes to sabotage our growth or to confirm our self-worth. And I've done that many times where I felt great about where we're going with the company, where I felt like we were moving at a fast pace. And yet I would find a person or a company or someone else that's just doing it better than me. Almost like, get off your high horse to myself, right? You can't feel this good. Let me go find something else or someone else that's doing it better. So you can feel bad about yourself. So you can feel like you're not good enough and you'll never be good enough. And this is something I think we do subconsciously. I think, sometimes, and I know I'm in this position where maybe I was feeling too good and I needed to have something bring me down. And the reality is we don't have to sabotage ourselves that way. It's okay to feel good. It's okay to feel great about what we've accomplished. Now, I'm not saying be content. I'm not saying be satisfied. But what I'm saying is it doesn't make us any better if we beat somebody else, right? And, validation of self-worth, when we do that, and I know that, it's not like it changes my life. Let's say I do go out and I only find people that I'm doing better than. What does that do for me? It doesn't make me any more money. It doesn't give me any greater satisfaction. What it does is just limits myself to knowing that I'm capable of even so much more. And let's say we do find that person that's doing more than us. Again, it doesn't help the trajectory of where we want to go. And I think we have to be very honest with ourselves of when we do feel jealous. I think we have to be very honest with ourselves when we do feel down. And being able to really, dissect what our feelings are. And if you really think about this, now I'm going to do something here. Like when you do a comparison and you come to a conclusion that you're not as good as this other person, right? Let's say your business is not as profitable as this other person. What we're doing is we're discrediting ourselves. And think about all the adversities and all the challenges you had to overcome just to get to this point. For all of you that hit the new records, right, for the second quarter or year to date, this is your best year yet. Like, think about everything you've overcome. And even if you didn't make the list, let's say it was your best quarter ever, but you didn't make the list. It's not something that it's always going to be this way. And, when we do that, when we say, well, I should have done as good as this person, or I know I'm more skilled than that person, that's another thing that, it's not a good habit to have. If you think about it, right? Two things. I'm not as good as them, or the other thing is I am as good as them. Why don't I have what they have? So both of them, both comparisons, right? One of not self-worth and the other of almost like jealousy, don't do us any justice to what we want to accomplish. So again, the first one is I'm not as good as them. You're discrediting yourself. You're discrediting your journey. And I would do that often. Feel great until I compare myself to the other brokerage. And I'm like, damn, I'm never going to be there. How am I ever going to compete? Am I only going to be stuck at this amount? Is $250 million in sales all I'm ever going to do with this brokerage? Not realizing that all I was doing is minding somebody else's business. All I was doing is giving up my energy to that other company. And discrediting myself. Because I remember when it was only $50 million in sales. So why am I so down on myself when I've quintupled that, right? Now we're much greater. We're near $500 million in sales yearly. And it's something that I never thought was even possible. But again, it comes down to realizing that just because I'm at a certain level right now, and just because you're at a certain number on the list, doesn't mean it's always going to be that way. It's up to you to realize that growth never stops. And it's okay to be inspired by somebody else, as long as it doesn't discredit your journey. Because when we look at the other side of this, right, when you say, I am as good as them, and I'm doing everything that they are doing, yet our results are not the same, they are far ahead, you're lying to yourself. What you're doing is now discrediting all their hard work and their journey. And then giving yourself credit for that and saying, I am doing the same. When in reality, the numbers showcase it is not the same. So we have to be very aware of that, because that's also dangerous. Because now you're crediting yourself with the work you didn't do and expecting the results of those that got it. Sometimes we don't even realize we're in that place. So when you say, hey, I've done everything that this top producer is doing, that's where you really need to analyze your actions. Because I guarantee the person that is moving at that level is because they sacrificed more. Is because they committed more. Is because they're more consistent. So we have to be aware. And when you do that, again, you're discrediting all their hard work. You're no longer admiring how they were able to build that great business. You're discrediting. For me to say I should be as good as this other brokerage down the street, I discredit all the years they've been in business. I discredit all the obstacles they had to face and overcome, and all the pain they had to go through, all the failures they had to overcome. I'm discrediting all of that to try to put myself at that level. It's a different conversation. And every one of us is in a different place, in a different journey, in a different time. So in reality, there is no apples to apples here. It's always going to be apples to oranges. It's the same business, but our experiences are different. Your journey is different. And the only comparison that needs to happen is where you were 5 years ago, where you were 3 years ago, where you were 6 months ago. Now, if you want real improvement, if you want to see real growth, compare to that. Now, if you're not in a place where you're actually better off, then there's work for you to do. Then you have to recalibrate and recommit. Now, if there is significant growth during that time, which I think most of us can attest to, that means you're on the right path. Don't try to force this. It is your journey. You've got here on your own. You did it on your own. You're capable. Because you're here. And there's different polarities. There's some of you that are seeing the vast difference of who you were, and some of you are looking back like those were my better years. You got work to do. It doesn't mean that you're going to be in that same journey 6 months from now. We heard those stories of individuals that have already doubled their goals and ambitions and targets in as little as 6 months. But with that comes a lot of work, a lot of sacrifice. It comes with a lot of self-appreciation and realizing that you are capable enough to be able to accomplish whatever you set your mind to. I promise you, none of the individuals that are hitting those numbers, if they spend their time comparing themselves, they would have limited themselves. So if you're not growing, consider you may be doing too much comparing. If you're not growing, you may be crediting yourself for the work you're not doing. And we need to be real with ourselves. We need to realize that every day has to be a day you're winning. And now, if you don't know if you're winning or not, it's up to you to track it. I'll continue to push a 12-week target book on you because I know it works. I know that if you're able to track your actions, your results will follow suit. So listen, it's okay to want more. I encourage you to want more. But don't simply want it to beat some other person. Do it because it's really going to better yourself. Social media makes it tough. I get it. And sometimes we're stuck in our own head. How did this person just start a year ago? How did this person just start 2 years ago? And they already grew their business 5 times what my business is. Don't discredit them. Do not discredit them. That is easy. Now you're feeling entitled. That is wrong. Do not discredit them. Instead, look at what you're doing. Better yet, look at what you're not doing. It'll tell you why they are 5 steps ahead. But this is about coming back to yourself and having that gratitude for yourself. And realizing, hey, listen, my head's over here. I'm like hating on them. I'm jealous of them. I'm feeling worthless. I get it. I'm going to tell you how to get out of that. Start doing something you know is good for your business. Start doing something that is good for your marriage. Get that guilt away from your mind, from your head. The shame. I've said this before. If you ever feel like you're not doing enough for your family, then consider that you're not. But that doesn't mean feel guilty about that. If you feel like you're not doing enough for your business, then guess what? Your mind is telling you you're not doing enough for your business. You know how you change that? You don't change it by dwelling and thinking about how somebody else is doing it better than you. You do something towards your business. You feeling guilty about not marketing? Guess how you change that? You do something towards your marketing. It changes the trajectory. It's not going to happen on its own. You're the only one responsible for your results. Beating somebody else, it's not going to make you better necessarily. Unless you feel good about your journey. That makes you better. Comparison. I mean, we're all susceptible to it. But again, it's about being grateful about where you're at. So listen, I've heard a lot of people say social media is like, it's so negative. So negative. There's, all these people are so fake too. Consider you may be doing a lot of consuming. You're going in there and you're consuming. You're not bringing any value to the social media world. You're not bringing any positivity. All you're doing is consuming and judging and comparing. Of course it's going to be negative. More creation, less consuming. Go in, create value. Appreciate your life. Tell your stories. Thank your clients. The reason you think it's so negative is because that's where it takes you. I love social media. Go in, do what I have to do, and I'm out. I like seeing all your successes, congratulate you, like your stuff, and I get out. So listen, we have 2.5 months left for this quarter. 2.5 months. And regardless of where you end up on the list, the only goal you should have is to improve on where you were 2 weeks ago when this quarter ended. That is the only comparison you need to be concerned about. And if you do better, great. And if you don't, great. It gives you an opportunity to improve. Because at the end of the day, you blow out your numbers. Doesn't mean you arrive and you put your feet up. In fact, I would say it probably helps those that fell short on their goals a little more than those that beat them. Because the ones that beat it tend to usually lay off a little bit. Take it a little easy. Celebrate too early. Now, I've got some messages from you. Some of you are really hungry. And I love that. If this drove you to become better, then you're welcome. Thank all those people ahead of you. Because now you're actually moving. They triggered you to do something. You were being a little complacent, weren't you? You thought you arrived a little too soon, didn't you? Thank them. Don't be mad at them. Don't beat yourself up for it. You got work to do. The comparison game. And trust me, listen, we all do it. Don't sit there and wallow in that place. Or try to compare, well, they may have more money, but I'm happier in my marriage. Or, hey, I'm selling more, but, they have 6-pack abs, so I'm not as good as them. Where were you 6 months ago? Are you better than that person? That's the only thing you really have control over. The only thing. But I think you're all in a place where you're wiser. You're more confident today than you were before. Let's place all those feelings there and realize, hey, listen, I am further ahead. And when I compare myself to myself, I have to thank myself because I'm doing the work. So what are you guys getting out of this conversation? I think it's something that it's often going to come up, especially at the end of the month, especially after every quarter. We're either going to feel great or we're going to feel a little defeated. Listen, if it inspires you to do something else, that's great. That's what we want. But don't be in a place where you think somebody else is better, because they're not. I bet if you heard everyone's journey and how they got there, you would be very happy for them. Because you'll realize how hard they had to actually work. You'll realize what they had to overcome at home. You'll realize the fears they had to overcome. Really comes down to confidence. So what are you guys hearing in this conversation? I want to thank everyone for joining me for this episode of Mindset Mastery. We got Felipe, Claudia, Rudy, Amir, Lonnie, Jeanette, Celia, Edgar, good morning, Kim, Raquel, Lorinda, Dominique, good morning. We have a lot of you today. Roger, Olivia, Claudia, Vanessa, Dora Lee, Patrick, Caroline, and Jesus. And we have Fred, Carmela, Bobby, Teresa. Let's read some comments here. Good morning, Maddie. Growth never stops. Absolutely. JJ, good morning. Sergio, the plants in my garden take a lot of time to grow into a mature parent. Once they get to the space, they finally produce fruit, and it feels like they produce fruit forever. Eventually, it slows down, and the fruit stops. But what happens next is amazing. They die off and drop new seeds from those fruits, and eventually continue the process of growth. The growth never stops. And some of you may be in that lull. Some of you have had greater months, but it doesn't mean you're retracting. It means you have to look at what you stopped doing. And it's a season, right? Everything is a season. And now you should appreciate the fact that you're in this place, because it's going to make you work harder. And we've all faced that, where we feel like everything's going one way, straight up. And at the moment it doesn't, we beat ourselves up for it. It's just a season. The time will happen if you go back to what got you there to begin with. When I look at where I was 3 years ago, I've grown so much as a person. My body and my mind and my business is moving forward. I haven't stopped, and I will never stop again. I see where I do well and where I don't. And I'm a work in progress always. Such great reminders. You know, I think we've all had our dark moments in life, our financial hardships, and the stresses of growing a business, right? We're on the right path. You're in the right environment to thrive wildly. Edgar, we have to demand more from ourselves than anyone else can demand from us. Absolutely. And the reality is if we only use one person or a couple of people as comparison, we will always limit ourselves. Like, if I only used the brokerages that I was looking at, I would have limited myself. I would never be where we're at right now, because we've outgrown them, because I saw something greater. And it wasn't just about numbers. It was about the impact we can make upon others. And it's amazing. The numbers are just come with it, because you're growing your business. Fred, you hit it on the mark with social media. I need to get in, make my post, and get out. It's real easy to get sucked into that vortex. We've talked about this. It's real easy. But if we're committed to creating value, positivity, right? Help, knowledge, education, and get out, it's something that'll serve you, it'll serve your business, it'll serve others. So great move right there, Fred. Use us as a source of inspiration and motivation, absolutely. Find inspiration in others, but also in your own evidence you have created. Absolutely, right? Because at the moment you say that this person's always going to be there, and that's what the challenge that I give you guys. You see all our top producers, you see the actions they take. And for those of you that are not on the list or low on the list, listen, don't just allow them to be great. You're great as well. You have your own experiences. You have your own path. Follow some of the actions that they take. Like, you want to get better? Just look at your actions and look at theirs. And again, there's healthy ways to compare. But just try to bridge that. I mean, to limit that gap between what you're doing and what they're doing. You'll see that there's a big difference right now. If they're hitting $10 million, $5 million a quarter, and you're hitting one, look there. They're like a blueprint. Like, thank them. They've built the blueprint for you to follow. So you can create your own path. But until you get there, like, just follow that. I'm not saying be them. I'm saying they've created something and they left clues. Follow them clues. Great inspiration talk. Thank you. You're welcome, Claudia. Just focus on yourself, not anyone else. Focus on your own goals, nobody else. Your life is your life and not to be compared to anyone else. What you see on social media doesn't mean every aspect of somebody else's life is great. Stay focused. Of course not. We're not going to post what we're facing, right? The challenges. We're not going to, our weaknesses, not necessarily, right? Unless it's like really far in the past. If you notice, people are more open about things that happened way back in the past, about how they overcame that, but not really the challenges they're facing right now. They're not really going to tell you about that big argument that went down at home over the weekend, or that mistake we made, right? Or whatever it may be. We always tend to tell the stories of way back when because now we feel secure about that. But nobody's really telling you what's going on right now, and you got to understand that. So the people that are raw and real, look at the stories they're telling. Even myself, I'm telling more stories of what happened back then. Right? Because some of the stories that are happening now I may be a little embarrassed about. So again, I'm only giving you a highlight reel. So yeah, everyone's real and raw to a certain point. So just understand that we're all human. We're all going to make mistakes. We all have the same feelings. How fast can you bounce back out? Guys, that's all I got for you. Is that all we have? I want to thank you for joining me for this episode of Mindset Mastery. Listen, we all have a journey. We all have actions we need to take. And the only comparison you should be able to do right now is those upon yourself, right? The only comparison is to yourself. Are you still taking the same actions you were before? Or, more than anything, have that gratitude for taking those actions and being where you're at right now. Thanks again, and I will talk to you soon.